are we are understanding the problems that an area or potential that an area is facing. So in the Green Economy Network, it's very much about understanding the needs of job seekers, the needs of workforce developers and employers, and including government agencies, figuring out how all of them can both add the strengths that they already have and how they can learn from each other to make their systems better. And especially with government agencies, better can also mean better understanding of what situations are and getting that information to more people more conveniently. New York City has a huge, in the New York area, has a huge number of opportunities in the Green Economy Network. And one of the largest challenges right now is too few people knowing about those different opportunities to be able to connect to them in the best ways possible. So for those of you who've been following our little roadmap over the past year, we are quite far along. The launch model and theories of change really is overlapping with what we were talking about on our goals and our priorities and what we'll be talking about a little later in terms of setting measurable targets. And once we are through this process and really have the working groups acting autonomously, we'll be nearer to the point where we can start setting up network norms. Some of you talked or asked before when we were talking about the regional clean energy hubs or some other opportunities, whether the Green Economy Network will be in and of itself a partner, and that's part of what that structure will look like. But we're going to save that for another meeting because that is a large undertaking. So for today specifically, we want to talk about the Commerce Department's Good Jobs Challenge. Some of you may have already heard about it loosely. Some of you may have been considering whether it's something worth applying to for your own entity. So we're going to dive into that and understand what it is, how it works, timelines, and most importantly, using this as a launching platform. Think about members of the network who might want to apply for it with potentially other members because they're such large grants, and the Commerce Department is very much looking forward to people working collaboratively on these efforts. After that, we're going to go deeper into the what comes next activity for the working group. Some of you already know about this because we talked about this last time where you're in a working group. We're going to take the next step of taking the responses from that and figuring out what it is that those responses say about the targets that we should set for activities and priorities over the coming year. And then we're going to make sure that people share out what their actual action steps are in order to get these priorities accomplished. So brief overview, today's agenda, we are going to hear from Jen Mitchell and Isabel McDevitt, who are going to tell us even more about the Good Jobs Challenge, specifically what it means for network members, what it means for collaboration, what it means in the context of the vision of the network. And we will hear out from the co-leads of the various working groups about what the working groups do, what they've done so far, where they're headed. And again, for anyone who hasn't joined a working group and is considering it, this is a great option to hear from them. And if one wants to get a peek into what the working groups look like, but hasn't been able to really commit, this is the best opportunity to peek inside a working group for a day, see, am I ready to commit to this, and then move forward from there. As always, if you have any questions about any of the working groups specifically, can reach out to Carrie or me, or if you want to have a chat with any of the co-leads from the individual groups, happy to talk with them, set up a meeting with them to understand more about what it is that they're doing and how they will do it. Great. So going to dive into the Good Jobs Challenge itself. For some of this information might be not new to some of you, because I know the Commerce Department has been trying to get this information out and has been talking about this through various other programs that are related to the package. So going to start by, I want to introduce Jen and Isabel, who are going to also talk about this. And then we're going to, after we cover the issue as a whole, we're going to have a very brief Q&A. The package is rather large, so if anyone has some deeper questions, we're going to send out plenty of links, and we're happy to have conversations afterwards about that. But Isabel and Jen, do you want to introduce yourselves before I dive in?
Sure. Good morning. Isabel McDevitt, Executive Vice President for the Doe Fund.
Hi, everybody. Jennifer Mitchell, Executive Director of the HOPE program. Good to see you all here today. And David is actually going to be doing a large part of this presentation as well around the Good Jobs Challenge. So he should be on that first slide as part of the presentation with us today. So handing it back to you, David.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to do this as a high-level overview, and then if at any point if you have questions, throw them in the chat, and we'll try to get through to all of them. And remember, if any part seems like we're going too loosely, we're going to get all of those links to you later, especially if you or the entity that you represent is potentially considering applying to the Good Jobs Challenge. So Commerce Department's Economic Development Authority, EDA, is administering the Good Jobs Challenge through the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA's $3 billion investing in America's communities, i.e. IAC programs. Do not need to remember all of these acronyms. The only thing that matters is that EDA is evaluating the Good Jobs Challenge. So the Good Jobs Challenge itself consists of about $500 million spread across 10 to 20 grantees. So we're looking at minimum $10 million grant, focusing on collaborative skills for skills training systems and programs. These are supposed to create industry-led training programs, providing skills, especially, most importantly, skills that actually get people into quality jobs, and especially for underserved populations. And yes, there is an EDA definition of what underserved populations are and an EDA definition of what a quality job is. Do not worry, these large government grants, there are usually very specific definitions about all of these things. In terms of who's eligible, almost any not-for-profit entity, which includes district organizations, Indian tribes, government entities, higher education institutions, or regular NGOs. The one key part to note with the NGOs that apply is that they must be acting in cooperation with a government agency, but acting in cooperation can literally mean a letter of support. So if your entity or collection of entities has these three different government agencies that are writing official letters of support saying, yes, this is a good organization that produces good results and we think they should get it, that is acting in cooperation. In terms of the structure, there are two different ways that the Good Jobs Challenge can break down in terms of the grants. One can be a single sectoral-led organization or sector partnership, or it can be a multi-sector partnership. Through either way, it's going to be a regional workforce training system, which means it's not just going to be, okay, my neighborhood, my borough, my city is doing just this, although for the EDA's purpose, they might consider New York City to be a region. The idea being that it's going to connect entities, not-for-profits and employers across a region, and the sectoral partnerships being led by backbone organizations. If you're curious about backbone organizations, it's similar to what JobsFirst itself does, and there are many of these sort of convening entities that bring together different groups. Again, happy to go into all the details of that. The timelines that matter, all applications are due by January 26th, 2022. All awards will be announced and initial funding set up by September 30th, 2022. And by law, all funds must be dispersed by September 2027. It should be noted that the way that the structure is set for the Good Jobs Challenge, all funding is done through a reimbursement model. And if an applying entity has, say, sub-entities, subcontractors, vendors, sub-organizations, then the EDA is just going to handle funding to that head organization, as it were, and then that head organization handles all the distributing funds down below. So very similar to other large government grants if you've worked with other federal agencies before. In terms of how it's going to be evaluated, grantees are going to be evaluated on their ability to produce outcomes as measured by quality jobs, especially in historically underserved populations or areas. Short version of quality job, it's one that exceeds the local prevailing wage for the area, has benefits of some kind, and or is unionized. Per EDA, any unionized job is by definition a good job. In terms of, I won't go into what the meaning of underserved populations or underserved areas are, but it's a very broad definition, so you are probably working in one of those areas that counts. In terms of improving the strength of the application, applicants are strongly encouraged to use leverage. For those not familiar with the term, leverage meaning, in this case, any kind of in-kind resources that effectively acts as additional funding, whether it's you're getting free rent from a space from an organization, or some entity is providing free training opportunities or free grant opportunities for which they normally would charge. All of that would be considered leverage, and EDA is looking for entities that are focusing on helping generally underserved populations and are being able to incorporate large amounts and diverse types of leverage into their application. And of course, given the size of these grants, they're they're happy to have members apply who are co-applying with other entities, even though the actual grant itself goes to one entity as part of the official grant. This just makes it easier for EDA. So I'm not going to go too much deeper into that. I'm going to pass it off to Isabel and Jen, who are going to talk about what this means in terms of the Green Economy Network and how people can start thinking about applying.
Thanks, David. I think I'm going next. You know, that's a really comprehensive overview, and there are a lot of backup materials. What I'm going to talk a little bit about is the vision that is very, very fluid at this point, but some of us came together to really think through how Green Economy Network could potentially pursue this opportunity. As David said, there's really kind of 4 key stakeholder groups as part of the Good Jobs Challenge, and 3 key phases. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the vision about how Jen might fit in based on the stakeholder groups and the 3 stages that are outlined in the Good Jobs Challenge. So the 4 stakeholder groups really relate, you know, within the framework of the Good Jobs Challenge around that backbone system lead organization, a government entity that would be kind of a sponsor of the effort, which could either be that backbone agency or just supportive of that backbone lead that could be a nonprofit. Training providers that would provide everything from skills training programs, union apprenticeship programs, transitional employment, and then of course, employers. So those 4 stakeholders, I think, are all represented in some form within the Green Economy Network. The concept that we talked about, and again, you know, we definitely want input and you know, to identify who might be interested in really thinking this through, would be that, you know, the Green Economy Network under the Jobs First umbrella could really convene and be that backbone organization to bring together the training providers that many of us, you know, are, and we're serving many of the populations identified by the Good Jobs Challenge. And then, of course, really put together a system that would work and bring in that government entity. We definitely know that to be competitive, we would either need to get strong support from a state or city agency, or potentially have that agency take the role of the backbone and lead applicant. I think that's to be determined, but that would be a key role that we'd need to figure out who that might be and how we would interface with that agency. As far as training providers, I mean, all of us are working in this area in many different ways. Jen's going to talk a little bit about sort of how we can identify who might be able to do what, but the training provider role is key. And then of course, the employer role is key. So the idea would be that the backbone agency would put together, those key partners, but this doesn't have to happen before January. The first phase of the grant is that system development. So the idea would be to apply with the lens towards, Jen, this group would be in that role of system development for stage 1. Which would be kind of the first year of the grant. And then, that would lead to a design network that would include all of the different training providers. And then of course, implementation, which would include training providers and employers. So really where we are right now is kind of the who, what, why, and how of this effort. And I think one of the most important questions, to put out there today is really like, who's thinking about applying for this? We've put out some feelers, but we really need to understand who else in the region, who else in the city and the state is thinking about this, both for the green economy, but also for other sectors. So if anyone, has intel there, I think that's an important thing for us to figure out. And then Jen's going to talk a little bit about kind of what roles all of us could play in moving this forward and who might have interest in helping to solidify this vision. So Jennifer Mitchell.
Thank you. And I think I'm going to give up on trying to get us to call the Green Economy Network the network. I've tried so hard because I'm Jen, Jen, here to talk about the Gen GEN Green Economy Network's potential role in the Good Jobs Challenge. So great to be here with everybody. David and Isabel, thanks for kind of setting both the macro and the micro context of this. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about very shortly and then send out a Google form to all of you in the chat to try to see what roles people could play in this. And so, Kerry and David and lots of folks from Jobs First would tell you there is never an ideal time for a huge transformative opportunity to come our way. And probably if we had our total druthers, we would say, oh, we really need 6 or 9 months more of planning and structuring and everything before we're ready to maybe go for something this big. However, you can't control timing of everything. And you also you specifically can't control timing of big kind of federal opportunities like this one. And so, the Good Jobs Challenge, I think, came out in mid to late August. It was kind of on my radar in the background, but I was like, it seems big and unwieldy and not due till January. So I'm going to keep putting it on the bottom of my to-do list. Thankfully, Isabel is less of a procrastinator, and it got to higher on her to-do list, and she read it through, and I think David and the folks at Jobs First had read it through, and it really occurred to us that that this is an amazing opportunity to kind of get the funding we need to not only do the work we do, but to really invest in the infrastructure and systems development at a citywide level for the green sector. And so this is, as you've probably gotten the sense from David and Isabel's presentation, this is huge. And it's November 4th, and this is due in January. And with Thanksgiving and the holidays, there's actually less time than we all probably feel to kind of gather our forces and figure out an exact strategy. And so our goal today is to, as Isabel said, like figure out if other people are thinking about this already and know of other kind of big agencies or work for big agencies that are already thinking about it, in conversation with it. As Isabel said, she and I have both put out feelers to places and gotten, mostly responses back of people are still in the planning stages and figuring it out. And so we really also see this as a window of like, can the Green Economy Network, can Jen marshal all our resources, kind of sort them out, and then go to maybe a city or a state agency and say, hey, we have 12 or we have 20 organizations that are interested in being part of this initiative. The Green Economy Network would be the convener, and then city or state agency, will you be the lead applicant? Because that might position us in a stronger way. And so what we want to do today is, and I really had a goal of not talking as of 10:30, but here I still am. So there's 4 roles that people like us here today can play in this Good Jobs Challenge. One is as a skills training program. And what that means, and many of us fall into that category, a program that trains workers with the foundational skills that they need for in-demand, quality jobs that prepare workers for career pathways after completion. People like Hope, people like Doe, lots of folks here would fit that box. And so that's one option for a role that you can play in a Good Jobs Challenge application. The second one, which I think is less people here, but there probably are still a few, is a registered apprenticeship model. And that's obviously using a combination of on-the-job training and mentorship with classroom instruction, resulting in like an industry recognized certificate that like shows occupational proficiency. So not as many folks will have that, but if you have that and you want to be put part of the Good Jobs Challenge, we absolutely would want to hear about that. And specifically, what is the industry recognized credential that would be earned? There's 2 other kind of categories that applicants can be part of. One is a work and learn model, which is kind of loose. It's a little bit looser, but it's a worker that's hired for a specific period of time, earning a wage, getting training, and then converting into full-time employment. So some folks might fit into that. And then last but not least, there's the role of a certification or credentialing program. And that's a program that is making sure people obtain an industry recognized credential or certification or license that is recognized by the state involved or the federal government. So those are the 4 big kind of categories in that application. And what I'm going to do right now in the chat, and we'll also send it out after the meeting, is send out, I will actually do it right now. We're putting out a Google form where we want to collect this information of like, hey, you're here today and you have the Good Jobs Challenge on your radar already, and you would love to be involved in an application lifting kind of the Green Economy Network off the ground, even more officially, doing that systems development, and then actually doing the work of training people and placing them with jobs. So I'm going to stop here because we don't want to take up this whole session with Good Jobs Challenge. But please, if you're interested, fill out the form. There is a part in the form that says maybe, and then give space for someone to say, yeah, I'm not sure this is what I would need to know before I am sure. But as I said at the beginning, we really want to take this information and then go to who we think would be a really strong applicant, be that NYSERDA, be it Department of Labor, be it the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development or Sustainability or SBS. We haven't decided yet because we got to kind of see what comes in and who the different roles are and where we feel it would resonate the most. So I'm going to pause there and we can take questions and try to give answers, though it's an iterative process. So we're all kind of figuring it out as we go too. And I just want to close with, I think this is a really, really interesting opportunity for the Green Economy Network to show kind of our strength and our voice and what our collective impact could be. So thanks for the opportunity to present today. Look forward to getting your Google form answers and answering any questions.
Jen, that was great. I just want to reiterate another point is that for any of our government partners that are on this call as well, we want to hear from you too, in sort of the perspective of, would your agency, either be considering the option of being a lead applicant or work with us to find another agency that might. So please also fill out the form as well. Because we need that and then of course, if anyone is an employer on the call, we want to hear from you as well.
All good points. Anyone have any questions?
Or if anyone has already read about this and has already considered applying, we'd like to hear from that. You too.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm from the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development. Thank you. I was in a meeting about this yesterday and then saw the agenda and was like, oh, perfect. I'm so thrilled that this group is thinking about it. So I wanted to mention that it is on our radar. We're very interested in it and we'd be happy to be a thought partner and write letters of support and want to be involved. It's a great opportunity. It's more money than we usually see. So it's, piqued our interest. And you didn't mention this, but I was taken by the, I don't think you mentioned it, but that this grant will fund wraparound services, which isn't something that we're used to seeing. So that's of great interest. And I think we have a lot to leverage as the city and as this group already. So just putting that out there. I can put my email in the chat, but definitely want to be a part of the planning.
Thanks, Laura.
Oh. Yeah, thanks, Laura. And we've touched base with some folks there also, and what it seems like is that everyone is in a similar time frame as we are, in that it's like November, this is due in January, and suddenly it's like So we're glad to hear meetings are happening.
Jen and Isabel, can you talk? I don't know if this has been kind of worked out, but have you thought, what's the thought about how to approach employer sectors? Is there a strategy for that, or is that the next phase?
So I think the way, and I read it, is that the beauty of this opportunity is it is a phased approach. So I think we would have to, have an employer strategy and certainly have some support from employers up front. And I know that the Green Economy Network employer group is already doing some great work there. But given the way that the funds roll out, there's a planning period around system development, and really a pretty decent runway to get to implementation. So I think the good news is that we would have some time to really lay out the process from training to employer engagement in that first phase of the grant. But in order to be a really strong contender, I think we would definitely want to get some employer commitments, at least at a high level, prior to submitting an application. But that's just my read. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts there.
Yeah, I would just echo that. When David and Isabel and I first talked, I was actually going to include a question in the survey about, like, if you are involved, would you have access to employers who you would also be able to get committed to this early on? But then at kind of like a second read, I was like, that might make some folks discouraged from saying they want to be involved now, and we do have some time and runway for that.
I have a quick question. I don't know if it's time for Q&A. Dave, cut me off if it is. I'm wondering, so the Good Jobs Challenge, you know, I haven't dived into the documents yet, but I wonder, is it putting the onus about good jobs on the training providers and workforce development organizations to persuade companies to step up their quality employment, or is this, do you think that there's something kind of like mandating or really incentivizing the businesses to take a lead on that?
I would say it's not putting the onus on either entity more particularly. So EDA is specific about what Good Jobs Challenge means, because it's doing that. It has to be prevailing wage or above, which can be looked up in each area. So it's essentially a numerical definition, unless it's unionized, and then it's a binary good or not good. So the idea, obviously EDA is hoping that an area either already has good jobs, and I'll put some clarity there. Per the terms of the Good Jobs Challenge, good jobs can either be created or retained or placed. So they can be brand new good jobs that didn't exist before. They can be placed, which means that there were vacancies, and that because of this Good Jobs Challenge funding, those vacancies are now being filled. Or they can be jobs that were going to go away, but now because of what the sectoral partnership is doing, that those jobs remain. So they're giving flexibility in terms of what those good jobs are, whether they're new or old. The only key thing is they have to either be above this regionally defined wage level, or they have to be unionized, or both. And everything else, they're really flexible on. I was actually somewhat surprised by how much flexibility is in this. I was attending the webinar, and as I mentioned in chat, the only red line prohibited funding use that they mentioned is construction. Does not mean that anything else under the sun would be allowed, but their starting point is we're open to anything except new building construction.
All right, I think unless folks have questions, we can probably move on. I just want to say, that there's already been 6 responses to the survey. So thank you for the folks who are responding so quickly. And I also want to emphasize, if you are on this call, but you think your organization might be interested, but you might not be the right person to be answering this survey or making that commitment, please let us know that, and or forward it to the person who you think would be, with all, obviously David's put a ton of links into the chat. And so happy to help folks who are on this call and are like, this sounds great, but I'm not in the right position to commit to this. We can talk through with you how to get involved and how to engage your organization. So let us know that as well.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
In the interest of time, we're going to move on to the next part of the agenda, but feel free to reach out via the form, via contacting one of the 3 of us any other way, and we will get all the information to everyone. So for the next part,
thank you, Jen and Isabel. That was excellent. Thanks.
For the next part, we're going to talk about the working groups, and we're going to briefly review what the working groups are and who's in them, and then we're going to go to the next phase. So starting with training and wraparound services, we have Diane and Nikita, and I think almost all of our co-leads are here today. I don't know if Diane and Nikita, you want to very briefly introduce what training and wraparound does for people who have not joined one of the working group meetings so far.
Hi, thank you, David. This is Diane Gonzalez from AEA. The Training and Wraparound Working Group has been developing or at least identifying what trainings are out there that we would want to really participate in, what services are out there as far as wraparound that we could develop resources for the group. For the last meeting, I was not present. However, I developed a spreadsheet that has information regarding career pathways for specific industries. And I'm hoping to invite the Interstate Renewable Energy Council Representative Joseph Scarby to discuss the chart further so that folks understand what skills, jobs related, and how they develop into career paths. Nikita, have I overlooked anything?
No, you covered it well. The bottom line is for us to make sure that we replicate and we upscale programs and best practices that are working, and we find a way to introduce green jobs to a population in a way and introduce them to the career pathway. So we're coming up with strategies and work goals that just kind of help us reach that. So absolutely.
Back to you, David.
Great. For our next working group, are we up next with? I think we have employer partnerships and economic opportunities are next. Jennifer or Stephanie, if you want to describe the group. Of one of them.
Oh, sorry, just had a cough. Hi, everyone. So the Employer Partnerships and Economic Opportunities Group is looking at how the network can leverage how we can, as a green economy network, leverage the collective power and bring opportunities from employers to the larger group. So our initial goals have been to determine as a collective, what we consider both a green job and a good job, so that we all have the same framework when we're looking at employers, when we're talking to employers, and when we're considering opportunities for our constituents of what fits into this bucket that we are trying to address. Jennifer, anything else?
No, I think you covered it. I would just add that our sort of end goal is to create within sort of 6 months a live job boards that is populated with those jobs by these definitions that we're setting.
Come talk to us more about it.
Very important to the job board, especially. Thank you. We're going to go next to our policy and advocacy group. If Eric or Nell wants to briefly talk about that.
Hey, everyone. I don't know if Eric is able to join us, but quickly, so I can go ahead.
Hi.
Hey, Eric, do you want to go ahead and get folks excited about the working group?
Yeah, definitely. And major thanks to Anel and David for facilitating up to this point. I think it's been a great conversation. A lot of sort of items in the news, of course, as we know, around policy measures, both, or I should say, all three: city, state, and federal actions. Working on different sustainable investments, or sustainability investments rather, that could have some major benefits for our folks. I think the perspective that we come from is that it's going to be up to us to actually take advantage of these opportunities for our grads, for our clients, for our members, however we all refer to them. So that's the goal of this group, is to really understand what kind of policy measures are out there in terms of whether sustainability more generally, as well as sustainability as it relates to jobs and equity in that way. And then to organize this group, both within the working group and the larger network, to take advantage of those opportunities for the people that we care about. So definitely come on and join us. We have lively conversations, and I think it's a good spot to be. Anel?
Yeah, no, definitely, especially if folks are interested in really flexing their policy and advocacy muscle. It's really a great opportunity for all of us who may have varying levels of experience to work together and refine those experiences. And, in terms of our priorities, is really, knowing that time is of the essence in terms of the potential to share out key recommendations that are aligned with everyone who's a part of the network, and that could really, as Eric mentioned, support all of our constituents in advancing their own careers and identifying opportunities to strengthen careers and opportunities within our sector.
Great. And then lastly, we will hear from strategy. If Tanya or Jen is around to do a quick
I am. I don't think Tanya is here, but I'm not sure. If you are, feel free to jump in, Tanya. But to start with, so we covered a lot of ground in the last strategy leadership group. And I think the biggest takeaways I would say, oh, Tanya, you are here. The biggest takeaways I would say are that we decided we really want to build the plane while flying the plane. And some of us are really, really interested in kind of thinking through what the structure looks like and what governance looks like and what commitment looks like to be a member of the Green Economy Network. And so we kind of decided to split up into smaller task force. And one of the task force is going to work on using Jobs First templates for letter of intent and membership expectations, and start to push that forward so that for all the subcommittees and all the working groups and all the convenings, we kind of know what it means and what we're committing to be an official member, for lack of a better word. And I think this, frankly, this Good Jobs Challenge conversation that we just had, I think, that can really help us along, not even whether we get it or not, even the process of applying for it, I think can help to strengthen that. And then the other half, really, as Anel just said, time is of the essence and wants to work closely with the policy and advocacy group to start to put together a Green Economy Network platform that gets in front of, the new mayor, in front of the new folks in state positions and says, this is who we are, this is what's important to us. And so we are, we basically divided into two subgroups that are going to be working on those things, and really will continue to build out a plan to make sure these monthly convenings are engaging and informative and using everyone's time really wisely. So that's all I would say. Tanya, I don't know if you would add anything.
No, I think you nailed it.
Great, thank you both. So we're gonna go to our next part. Let me just get this shared.
Dave, let me know if you want me to, oh, you got it, great. So I'm going to skip over something kind of fun, but we'll save it for next time or for working group meetings. We had some polls set up, but I want to get you into your breakout rooms. I think that's more important. And so let's just skip right to that activity. Oh, great, you've got it. So what we're working on today is building off of the Planning What Comes Next activity that you all have been working on in our last breakout session here, and in your working group meetings and over email. And this week, Dave and I shared spreadsheets with all of you, converting your activity sheets, your Jamboards, taking all the information that you've put forth, your action steps to achieve goals, and we put those into the spreadsheets that we shared with you this week. And my colleague is going to share in the chat now links to the target activity. In that target activity, there's also a link to that spreadsheet if you want to access it. So in just a minute, all the working group members are going to split into breakout rooms based on your working groups. And if there are folks here who are not in a working group and you're interested in one of the ones you just heard about, just let us know and we'll move you in there after we launch them. And most of the groups have been making progress on these Planning What Comes Next. All of you have, really, since our October meeting. And so today you're going to begin to synthesize all of that information and develop a measurable target. And I'm just going to briefly review the instructions, but you will also have them on those activity sheets. So just to remind everyone, we did this in a few meetings ago, going over kind of our glossary. A target is a measurable goal that states what, for whom, where, by how much, and by when. So some of you might be familiar with the term SMART goals. A target is like a SMART goal. It's a way for us to set benchmarks, interim measures, and make sure that we're getting to the future state that we want to see as a result of this green economy network. So when you get into your breakout rooms, I would like each of you to take a few minutes to review your working group's spreadsheet that you will have a link when you get in there. And the priority goals of your of the Green Economy Network. All three of them are on your activity sheet, each of your activity sheets. And then consider these and keep them in mind as you move towards setting a target. So really look at those actionable next steps and the overall goals. And then you're going to use all of those to individually think about, there's a template there with blank spaces for you to form a target that has, you know, percentage, number, kind of like a Mad Libs, if I'm not dating myself and everyone knows what that is. So each of you going to put in an idea and then talk about it as a group and see if you can come to some consensus around one or a couple of targets that you think are important for the group to work on. And just two quick things at the beginning of the session. Each facilitator, please reshare the link to the target activity. And that includes the link to the spreadsheet. And then working group leads remind participants that we'd like you to, the goal of this is to set that measurable target. And also the support or facilitator in the room get a volunteer to share out your ideas of targets and any questions or data needs that you might have for that. And that's it. You'll see those instructions again when you get into your room and have your activity sheet. So it should be pretty clear. And let's go ahead and launch the breakout rooms.
I can go first because it'll be very short. We didn't get to actually go to the targets. We're going to be prioritizing that for our next group meeting. We did have great conversations around organizing ourselves and some opportunities to join the working group for the policy priorities and some of the resources that we'll have available.
All right, thank you, Anil. And who next?
I'll go next for the strategy group. Again, we're some of this dovetails with what the other work groups are doing, but I think where we landed on some of this stuff is we had a generalized discussion, and I think we're obviously this is just sort of the first layer of the onion that we're peeling back here. But in terms of targets, we sort of decided to look at the green economy and look at it the big picture. What are the various sectors? Because we're talking about a lot of sectors in the green economy. So we have energy, we have food, we have transportation, we have new technologies like battery storage. And we don't really have a handle yet on what are the jobs there currently to set a baseline and then to grow and see where we want those sectors to be 6 months from now, 3 months, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. I think that's the work to be done. That was one area that we looked at. The other was recruitment and measuring how do we engage people in the green economy and get people interested in it. And so again, one of those things of trying to identify the data of where things are now, what's the current interest, how do people get interested in it, and where do they go in the next 6 months and 3 years. And we may find that within each sector, going back to the sector targets, you may find in each sector that there's also subsectors. So you may have in the energy sector, you may have utilities, you may have solar, you may have wind, you may have a bunch of different things that are sort of subsectors in the energy sector. So Same thing with food, same thing with transportation, same thing with other types of sectors. So I think from that, we can start to extrapolate. As we get more data, we can start to extrapolate what the targets are in terms of setting a baseline now in all those areas, and then moving forward, going forward to see where we want to be in 6 months, 3 years.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And who would like to go next?
I can go.
Great, thank you.
So, yeah, so I'm representing the employer partnerships and economic opportunities. And one of the priorities that we are setting is to create an aggregate platform that's both interactive and stands out from other job boards by having quality jobs that meet our definition of quality. We want to, in terms of time, we want to rough out a prototype similar to WikiLinks that people can actually be interactive with, as I said. And our challenge, obviously, besides for cost, because we don't know how much this would cost, is the technology itself, how to roll out the technology, and to make sure that it is mobile friendly. Ongoing maintenance and management would also be an issue that we would have to address, keeping it live and accurate and updated.
Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Mhm.
And next,
Now, training?
yeah,
Wraparound? All right. So the group discussed a couple of things. One of them was collecting data, baseline data that would help better assess and create numbers. That data would relate to either trainings, there was, training related information, minority information, recruitment information that's out there in the city to see in green jobs, to see how we can collectively have that information and then determine what percentage would make most sense in setting goals. They also discussed creating videos that would be relatable to young adults that would help them identify what jobs are out there and help them understand what those career paths are, along with other technologies that might be accessible and appealing to young adults.
Good idea.
thank you, Diane. And we are at 11:30. Just a moment if anyone has anything to add to what their group reported. We have collected the information on the activity sheets from those rooms, and we'll reflect that back out to all of you and continue setting targets and figuring out what data is needed to baseline information in working group meetings. And we will see you in December. December 2nd is the first Thursday. Dave, anything before we?
No, just want to remind everyone that, as Karen mentioned, the documents will remain accessible for people to fill in between now and when their group next meets. And if anyone has any questions about Good Jobs Challenge, working groups, or the network as a whole, reach out to Karen or me, and we will, in a follow-up email, send information about both next meeting and some links about the Good Jobs Challenge in case your entities want to apply. Thank you all for joining this morning. I know we went slightly over. I think this was a productive session.